everyone, my name is BaxtyB and welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be doing a beginner's guide to Formula 1 with a slight difference. This isn't going to be me just talking to you and going, Formula 1 started in the year... Yeah, we're not doing that. My wife, Mrs Baxty, doesn't actually know that much about Formula 1, so she actually said to me, look, I want you to answer some questions, not just for my benefit, but for anyone that may be trying to get into Formula 1 this year in 2023. So she has recorded some questions for me to answer, and without further ado, let's get into it.
What makes Formula 1 a sport?
So what does make Formula 1 a sport? Well, I've had a look at the dictionary definition, and to paraphrase, it has to be physical exertion and skill where an individual or a team competes against one another for the benefit of others for entertainment purposes. So, physical exertion. Drivers have to be fit, they're pulling a lot of G's, a lot of pressure through the neck, and also they have to be fit enough to just drive the cars in general because they're going at such high speeds. You also have the pit crews that need to be incredibly fit because they are lifting incredibly heavy tyres and they're trying to do it as quickly as possible. Skill, driving skill, obviously. You also have the skill of engineers to extract as much performance from the car as possible, be it from engines, be it from aerodynamics. You also have the skill of strategists who try and make sure that their driver can get from point A, the start of the race, to point B as quickly as possible and ahead of their rivals. So there's a lot of skill involved there, and when that all comes together and you have all of these people working together for one aim, it's not just the drivers and the car. It's an incredible team endeavour, and it's what makes this sport so fascinating. Yes, the drivers will compete as individuals for the World Drivers' Championship, but they will also be working together with the World Constructors' Championship as teams. And who doesn't want to see highly tuned, wonderfully designed F1 cars racing against each other? It is honestly wonderful. So for those of you who may think that Formula 1 is competitive engineering, here's an explanation as to why it is a sport.
When did Formula 1 start?
So I actually had to take my glasses off there because I realised that they were shining off into the camera. Not always fun, but and also I was trying to make myself look intelligent. Anyway, to answer Mrs Baxty's question, when did Formula 1 start? It started in 1950, and it was basically, there have been European motor racing championships throughout the 1930s and 40s. Obviously there were breaks due to the war, but in effect it was an effort to essentially standardise and get all of these massive races under one umbrella, and it was kind of like a coming together of the best drivers in the world in the best cars, and also standardising the technical regulations as well, so everyone was working to the same rules. Obviously the Italian teams like Ferrari and Maserati were best placed to take advantage of this, and yeah, so the sport started in 1950, and in 2020 we celebrated the 70th anniversary, and there was a special 70th anniversary Grand Prix held at Silverstone, which is where the first Grand Prix took place as well, and on that occasion it was won by the current world champion, Max Verstappen.
How does it work?
So how does Formula 1 work? Well, you have a collection of teams, I will get into more detail about that later on, who come together with two drivers. They race in single-seater cars. That is what makes Formula 1, the single-seater element of it. They come together, they race at a set amount of races across a season. So in previous seasons it's been about 18 or 19, this year it's 23, and they race all over the world. At the end of those 23 races, the driver with the most points becomes the World Drivers' Champion, and the team with the most cumulative points between their two drivers becomes the World Constructors' Champion. So obviously last year the World Champion was Max Verstappen, and his Red Bull team won the Constructors' Championship as well. His teammate Sergio Perez finished in third. Obviously location of races all around the world. We have 3 races in America, we've got loads in Europe like the UK and Spain and Belgium, and you've got Italy and San Marino. Then of course you've got races in Asia like Japan and Singapore, in the Middle East with Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and of course you have as far out as Australia. That's always one of my favourite weekends. But that in essence is how Formula 1 works in its most basic form and how the championships run.
How many teams are there?
So there are currently 10 teams on the grid. You have historic privateer teams such as Williams and McLaren, who have history in the championship, multiple championships between them. And you also have some of the biggest names from the auto industry, such as Mercedes, Ferrari, as well as some others, Alpine as well, representing Renault. And of course, you also have the energy drink company Red Bull. They have been competing in Formula 1 since 2005. They have won multiple championships themselves. But at the moment, we have 10 teams based mostly in fact, entirely in Europe, though they do have ownership in other countries.
Who are the drivers?
Who are the drivers? Well, there's 20 of them with 10 teams, obviously maths. And they are a collection of young drivers who have been brought through by teams, very promising young drivers. They've all kind of come through the feeder system. So you've got, F3 into F2, and then hopefully you get into F1. Sometimes you have a bit of a more roundabout route. Nick de Vries won F2, but then went off to Formula E, which is the all-electronic series, and he won that and then was able to get a drive following that. And you've got a mix of experience as well. You have those at the top end, like Fernando Alonso, who's now in his 40s, has been racing since 2001, 2 world titles, one of the greatest of all time. Alongside him, you've got somebody like Lewis Hamilton, arguably the greatest driver of all time, 7 world titles. He's been involved since 2007. And this year we have 3 new rookies coming in. You have Oscar Piastri, one of the most highly rated juniors to come in since probably George Russell. You've got the aforementioned Nick de Vries, and you also have Logan Sargent, the first American driver in God knows how long, and he's going to be racing for Williams. And it's just a nice mix. You do have the occasional pay driver, Lance Stroll, somebody who can bring a lot of finance to the team to help them, particularly those at the lower end of the grid. But actually this year I've noticed that there aren't actually too many of those. So it's not unusual to have that. It's actually more unusual for them not to have too many pay drivers. So that's quite nice to see that actually there are 20 drivers on the grid who are there mostly because of their speed. And even those pay drivers that are around have been around for a long time and have proved themselves to actually be pretty useful behind the wheel of a Formula 1 car.
What is the Constructors' Championship? Surely all the cars are the same.
Now you see, if there was ever a question that showed off if somebody was a beginner with Formula 1, then this is it. In an ideal world, yes, all the cars would be the same, but that is not what motorsport is about. Motorsport isn't just about drivers, it's about the team that go with them. They build the car. Everyone has a sort of base set of rules that they have to follow, but everyone interprets them differently. That's the beauty of this sport, the interpretation. Let's look at 2022, for example. You have Mercedes, they had 0 side pods. And then you had Ferrari, you had these great giant side pods with the beautiful scalloping in between, which interestingly Aston Martin seem to have gone down that approach this year. Have a look at their car, you will see that approach. But that's the beauty of Formula 1. And the Constructors' Championship, as I explained earlier, is the cumulative total of the 2 drivers for a particular team. As I said, the defending champions are Red Bull. Ferrari, I believe, have the most Constructors' titles, but Mercedes won the most in a row. They won 8 in a row between 2014 and 2021. But the Constructors' Championship is a vitally important part of Formula 1. It was first introduced in 1958, I think, and Van Wall were the first champions. There's some knowledge for you. But yes, no, the Constructors' Championship is just the team's championship, essentially.
Do people support a team or an individual driver?
So ultimately, it's personal preference. I started off supporting Lewis Hamilton, and then after he moved to Mercedes, and I actually started supporting Mercedes as well. But I do also support other drivers out of Mercedes. I support Lando Norris, I support Valtteri Bottas. I have been a fan of Daniel Ricciardo in the past. Yes, I am a fan of George Russell. He's a current Mercedes driver. And I do have a soft spot for McLaren, partly because of Lewis and partly because of other reasons as well. But yeah, it's really up to you. I mean, there are some people that support Max Verstappen. By proxy, they support Red Bull, but I think they would take their support elsewhere if Max was ever to leave Red Bull. Ultimately, it's up to you and what you choose to do. You either pick a driver or you pick a team. I'm not here to tell you to do one or the other. It's totally up to you.
Has the sport got safer, or have the drivers got better?
So there's 2 ways to answer this question. in regards to the sport being safer, 100%. F1 is so much safer than it used to be. The best example, go to 2020, watch the Bahrain Grand Prix and watch the crash that Romain Grosjean had. Even 10 years ago, that crash would have killed him, and yet somehow he walked out of it with minor burns. It was an absolute miracle. You've also had the innovation of the Halo device. But obviously back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of drivers used to lose their lives. It was kind of an accepted part of the sport, and it took Jackie Stewart, legendary 3-time world champion, basically standing up and going, this is not acceptable. We need to improve driver safety, and it is one of the most important aspects of the sport. And accidents do happen, and drivers do get injured. And the last person to die in Formula One was Jules Bianchi. He had his accident in 2014 and very sadly passed away in the summer of 2015. But yes, it's got safer. In regards to drivers getting better, that's impossible to tell because the sport has changed so much over the years. Who knows if one of the legends of the 1950s, Juan Manuel Fangio, the best driver of the 50s, undisputed, would he be able to compete in modern day machinery? Maybe he could. You just don't know because the cars are so different. So it's impossible to tell if the drivers have got better. But certainly, you have to say that the sport is so much safer.
What makes Formula One so exciting?
I can only answer this question from a personal perspective. You've got the speed, you've got the drama that comes with it that only the speed of Formula One cars can give you. You've got the drama between the drivers. I mean, what made 2021 so fantastic was you had this incredible title battle between Lewis Hamilton, the grand champion, the greatest of all time, against the guy that many had seen as the pretender to his throne in Max Verstappen. We just won't mention the ending because I've already spoken about that. You've also got these guys, you've got these drivers and teams, and these guys are operating at 150, 200 miles an hour, and they're playing high-speed chess. They're thinking so fast. It's absolutely incredible, and I love it. People find enjoyment in different things. I know there are some guys that love getting into the technical minutiae, looking at the cars when they're released, going, oh, that front wing looks interesting and everything else. That's not so much for me. I'm more about the drama and the stories. That's what I love doing.
What will be new and exciting this season?
So, in terms of what would be exciting in 2023, we're in the second year of new technical regulations. Last year we had major new technical regulations come in, and Red Bull just destroyed everybody. Ferrari also had a very quick car. Mercedes, who had destroyed everybody in the previous regulations, they kind of got it wrong, but fought their way back into it. So it's a matter of which teams are going to have sort of made the most progress between 2022 and 2023. There is also the intrigue with Red Bull. They were actually found to have breached the sports cost cap for the 2021 season in 2022. They kind of found out last year, and they've had to actually take some serious penalties for that in terms of the amount of testing they can do. So they're going to be slightly restricted on the car development that they can make over the course of the year. And it's a question of whether Ferrari and Mercedes, or maybe some of the other teams, Aston Martin certainly are a team that I'm keeping an eye on in 2023. Can they make that progress? What is new? There's not much new with the cars, but we do have 3 new drivers, as I mentioned before. And I think the driver that I would really look out for is Oscar Piastri. This is a really exciting young junior driver, somebody who has won everything in the junior formula. He's going up against Lando Norris, somebody who was himself, when he came into the sport in 2019, incredibly highly regarded, and I think that's going to be a fascinating battle between those two. And also, look, is there going to be a title fight for the World Drivers' Championship? As great as Max Verstappen was last year, it's never that great when a World Drivers' Championship is just, won at an absolute canter. You want it to go down to the final race. You want it to go down to the wire. Obviously, you don't want the race director to make errant decisions, but you want it to go to the final race and just let the drama of that situation play out. And hopefully we get that this year. There's no guarantee, but I'm confident that it will be a little bit closer this year. That's for sure. So there you have it. Those are the 10 questions in a sort of ad hoc beginner's guide to Formula One. And you'll be pleased to know that Mrs BaxtyB has actually also done 10 more questions, which that will be coming out next week. If you want to see that video and you want to see any more of my F1 content, I've done a lot of shorts recently for the 2023 liveries. Just hit the subscribe button below, check out the channel. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you have any questions of your own that haven't necessarily come up here, then just feel free to ask those questions below. I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability, and if not, I'll probably point you in the direction of people that are more qualified to do so. But you know, please do that. And to anyone that's watched any of my videos or my shorts, thank you so much. We're getting closer to the start of the season now, and I'm so excited for the story of 2023. I know I don't have the biggest subscriber count, but to me, you guys are everything. So thank you. If you're not subscribed, please join the family. You're always welcome. And yeah, looking forward to where we go from here. Well, that's it. Until next time, guys, stay safe, and I shall speak to you all very, very soon.